Hi, everyone. I'm Talia. Welcome to Tales of Triumph, the Love Metals podcast, where we share stories of victories in life and courage in the face of adversity. Thank you for celebrating perseverance, purpose, and love with us today. We invite you to join our community by subscribing now and finding inspiration from victories big and small. Your engagement and support mean a great deal to us, enabling us to grow and inspire even more people. Today, I'm delighted to share my conversation with Simon Keith. Simon is the first athlete ever to play professional sports following a heart transplant. At 21, Simon overcame immense odds after receiving a heart from a young man in the UK, and then making a triumphant return to the soccer field. His remarkable journey evolved into a powerful advocacy for organ donation through the Simon Keith Foundation. Simon has been awarded the Order of Canada, and most recently at the Paris Olympics 2024, the Sports for Peace International Award for inspiring and saving lives. As a successful entrepreneur, COO of the Nevada Donor Network, and celebrated author, Simon's story is one of courage, resilience, and inspiration. Please enjoy. This episode contains content of a sensitive nature that may be triggering for some individuals. Hi, Simon. Thank you so much for being our guest today. It's a real joy and an honor to have you. I'm very excited about our conversation and to learn more about you and your story. So thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, my pleasure. I'm excited to be here too.
Let's start with soccer. That is something I'm becoming more familiar with because my son plays soccer and he's obsessed with it. So are all of his little buddies. And from what I understand, that was the same for you. You were obsessed with soccer from a young age, and it was that way for your entire family, correct?
Yeah. I grew up in Victoria, British Columbia, of course, in a very type A athletic competitive family. There was 3 boys. I was the youngest of 3, so there was 4 men in the house. And my poor mom, she played the role of supportive wife and mother to these 3, really 4. We were probably like a pack of wolves, just animals. But yeah, that's how we grew up.
Amazing. And so you obviously had a natural talent and you excelled in soccer. Can you share with us where things were going for you in your soccer career prior to receiving your diagnosis?
So of the 4 men in our household, I was without a doubt the least talented, both physically, athletically and academically. I was very small growing up, and I had a brother, Adam, who was 13 months older than me, but he was, at 14 years old, he was a full-grown man, and at 13 years old, I was a infant child. So the disparity was massive, and I spent my whole young life trying to catch up to Adam. And so eventually, we played all sports. We loved sports. Soccer was our number one sport. And eventually I figured out that being 4th best in our household was not so bad when I started to get picked for, city all-star teams and provincial all-star teams, and then eventually, getting called from the Canadian national youth team and spending a couple years with the youth team. So I was sort of making my way in the soccer world. It sounds sort of cavalier, right? It's a big deal, of course, getting called to your national youth team.
Absolutely.
If it was in anybody else's house, but it was in our house, so everyone else had been doing it. So it's sort of like, okay, you're next up. But yeah, so I made my way. I graduated high school, and I had a decision to make. Was I going to go to university and play, maybe at UVic or UBC, or was I willing to sort of go for it and become a professional? So I moved to London, England, and just called teams and did tryouts, and I ended up signing for a team called Millwall in East London, and was able to play professionally for a while. And that's sort of where my love of the game came from. And then when I was in London, I got a call from a guy named Tony Waiters, and Tony was the national team coach, and Canada was preparing for the World Cup team, and they had a national training center at the University of Victoria. So I got invited. He said, listen, we're setting up the national training center in preparation for the World Cup. This was like in 1985, so a full year before the World Cup. We'd like you to come and be a nationally carded athlete, so essentially a professional athlete. You can go to school, they pay for all your stuff and pay you a stipend, etc. So I made that choice and I said, yeah, I'm going to go back and prepare for the World Cup. And it's the dream, right? That's the pinnacle.
Yeah.
And so I got back to UVic and started playing with the national team. And for some reason, everything changed. Everything changed. I had learned in the UK that the difference between being an amateur player and a professional player has nothing to do with your physical abilities. Because when you get to the highest level, everybody's fast, everybody's strong, everybody's skillful, everybody's smart. And the difference is what I learned in the UK is, what are you willing to do? Are you willing to step on someone's neck? That's the difference. And that's pro sports. I mean, that's just the reality of pro sports. So I got back to Canada and I had found that I was not feeling the same way. I wasn't willing to step on people's necks and I was just struggling to get through practices. The joy of the game was sort of leaving my body. It didn't make any sense to me. So anyways, long story short, we figured things out. I went to a bunch of doctors, psychologists, we did cancer stuff and blah, 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 blah. Eventually we figured out that I had contracted a virus in my heart and my heart was in distress. Anyways, long story short, of course, either it didn't end well or it ended great, but I needed a heart transplant to save my life. Yeah.
What a curveball. I mean, I know that's not a soccer term, but still, my gosh. Can you walk us through your mental and emotional journey from that moment when you found out that you needed a heart transplant to your recovery period after surgery?
Yeah, before the transplant, it was really like a slow drip. It was like a slow water torture, and every day just got a little bit worse. But the athletic mind that I had sort of cast in steel growing up in that household, I just kept fighting every day. And so I would find myself in the hospital one day, back on the pitch the next day, playing at a sort of a world-class level, and then
oh my gosh,
2 days later back in the hospital. And so it was a year of this continual battle. One of the things that we train ourselves as athletes is to just turn off that pain meter, and that was me for a very, very long time, until a very important date in my life. It was March 3rd, 1986, and I had just had another heart biopsy at Vancouver General Hospital. And a heart biopsy is they cut your neck, they go in through, they put a tube down your neck and big long wire with a clipper at the end. You're awake for the whole thing. It's super fun.
Oh my God. Okay.
I've only had 150 of them now, so it's like nothing for me. Yeah. Oh yeah. So
wow.
So Dr. Ritchie in Vancouver, who was my cardiologist at the time, did this heart biopsy, and he finally said, me and my pops were there, and he finally said, listen, Simon, we finally figured out what it is. You have a virus, it's causing cardiomyopathy, which is an inflammation of the heart muscle. And I hate to tell you, but you need a heart transplant. You need it now, or you'll be dead in 6 months.
Wow.
At that point, I was still, sort of really laser focused on the World Cup, which was coming in, June and July that year. And so, yeah, pretty devastating diagnosis, sitting in that wheelchair in Vancouver General Hospital, just pissed off. I mean, that's the reality of it.
Yeah. You mentioned having your sports background and therefore being able to turn off anything towards pain. But then I also heard you mention that you wouldn't allow any fear or doubt to be in your space when facing adversity.
Yeah, it's an interesting discussion. I talk a lot, even today in my professional life, I talk a lot about fear and the power that fear has over us, and how we feed into it and how to overcome it. I had a great gift, of course, chasing, living in a house which really was a pack of wolves. There's no space for fear.
Got it.
You're fighting for everything. I mean, I'm fighting for food when I'm a kid because I was the youngest. And,
oh no.
Oh yeah. So I that was a gift, of course. Fear's an interesting concept.
Yeah, it really is. I realize that's something that's gone on in your life that's prepared you or set you up with that gift. And not everybody has that. So It's sometimes very obviously difficult for a lot of people to do that. You were singularly focused on getting back to soccer after your transplant and being a pro athlete. You mentioned taking on a pretty selfish approach to life at that point, and I guess that goes hand in hand with having unwavering determination. And that worked for you. So can you share with us what you were able to achieve in your soccer career after your transplant?
As it relates to fear, just to bridge this gap here. So as it relates to fear, one of the most important pieces of my life, of course, is, of course, getting a heart transplant. But the moments leading up to that, you're 21 years old and you're fighting for your life, and you are about to get wheeled into an operating room, and they're going to open your chest and take your heart out and put somebody else's in.
Yes.
That gift alone of being able to manage that process, that puts fear into a whole different categories. So when I woke up, the guy who oversaw the whole program, I had my surgery in England. His name was Dr. English, and he's now Sir Terence English. He's been knighted for all his work. Yeah, he's a great guy. He's
amazing.
he's amazing guy.
Wow.
Trained under Christian Barnard in South Africa, like the real deal. So Sir Terence was a lot like my dad. He didn't say much, but when he spoke, you tended to listen. And he said something to me about a week after surgery. It was a very innocuous conversation. It wasn't like this big thing with lights and cameras and all this stuff. It was just like in this dumpy little hospital, and he was stopping by my bedside. And it was a week after surgery, and I'm getting anxious and like ready to sort of get moving again. And he said something very important to me. He said, "Simon, the goal for you is to resume your life that you led prior to being sick."
Got it.
And for me, I wouldn't say he was the singular supportive voice, but he set a standard for me that really resonated with me. Because, when you go through something traumatic like that, you have everybody around you who starts to treat you different, who wants to protect you, who wants to love you, who wants to put a blanket on you. I just wanted to be who I wanted to be. I wanted to be myself. I was not trying to prove anything. I just wanted to be myself, which was the youngest son of David and Sylvia Keith, who was a competitive athlete who fought for everything, and that's what I wanted to be. I did learn that I had to become selfish because I was on a path that was unknown.
Yeah. You have no template to follow. So then I watched an interview where you talk about having an epiphany in front of the grave of your first heart donor.
Yeah.
And you were standing there with his father. And this was 25 years after living with his son's heart. Can you share with us what happened in that moment and what became so clear for you?
Yeah, it really was an epiphany. So August of 2011, it was 25 years after, of course, receiving this man's son's heart. His name is Roger, and Roger has become a wonderful, wonderful friend of ours, of course. He's like the grandfather in every Hallmark movie you've ever seen. Just a kind, loving, gentle, just a wonderful man. And, he's on the other side of the equation, right? He suffered great loss, and the death of his son, which was the middle child of 5, frankly tore their family apart, and very, very difficult. Roger sort of still blames himself for no reason, but it was an emotional day. So we went to a small town in Wales called Newport, Wales, where we met Roger. And standing at that gravesite of his son, Jonathan Edward is his first two names. His last name is Grove, so John Edward. We spent the full day with Roger. We'd gone to where his son had gone to school, and where his son had grown up, in the house, and the soccer field where he passed away playing soccer. And like you say, we ended at the gravesite, and standing there, I had an epiphany. And the epiphany was this. It was, for the past 25 years, maybe longer, I had sort of done, like we all do, things that were important to me. And at that stage in my life, it was pay the mortgage and build a business and put money in the bank and support my kids, and all that stuff that is very sort of intrinsically focused on me and mine and how do I achieve and how do I win and how do I get more and all that nonsense.
Yeah.
and on that day, I just decided I was going to just turn it all the way around, and I was going to just dedicate sort of my life to helping others.
Wow. I love that. I just had shivers go because I live for those kinds of moments. I experienced it myself where I had that aha moment, that epiphany, and it was all in my heart. Like I felt it right there, and just everything kind of, all those misaligned cogs and everything would just went and just fit into place, and you know what your next journey is and how you're meant to travel it. So I love that. That's such a beautiful moment. Thank you for sharing that with us. So about, I guess it was like 2 years after your transplant, you might have been about 23, you were voted USA's most courageous athlete, which is so cool. I don't know if you know this, but courage actually comes from the Latin word cor, which means heart. So knowing what you know now as a 59-year-old,
Yeah.
about what it means and what it takes to live courageously from your heart, is there a difference between how you received that recognition as a 23-year-old and how you would receive that now?
Yeah, there was a period of time post-transplant where I got my amateur status back, played college soccer with my brother at UNLV in Las Vegas, and then returned to professional soccer. And all this stuff sort of happened. It was sort of like this swirling vortex around me, and it was just madness. It was media and media and media and media and over and everything and awards and all this stuff. And I think my strategy at that point was I just was never going to blink. I was never going to let anybody know how hard it was, which is vastly different than today. After I finished soccer, after I retired from professional soccer, I made a silent vow to myself that I would never talk about my story again, ever, because I was so sick of being the heart guy. So sick of it.
Yeah.
And then that 25 years crept up on me, and I decided to do a big and chunky thing and write a book and go meet the family and all that stuff. And then I thought that would be it. But as we talked about that epiphany at the gravesite of my donor, I started to recognize that I could do some good, and I did it in my own way. I went down the business path of organ donation and transplantation around the world and really became a global expert. But then there's a next sort of comma on that sentence that I didn't ever see coming, and that was learning to live my life and lead with love and hope and spirit, and telling people things like, I'm proud of you and I love you and this is how you become great. Let me help you.
I love it. I love it. That's beautiful. That really is. That touches me right here. You just mentioned not wanting to be known as the heart guy, at least in your soccer career. And that came up a few times for you in some interviews that I watched. Had you ever at any point in time thought about what your life would have been like had you never contracted the virus? And if you could, would you change that part of your story?
I don't think so. I mean, of course, right? I think, I had a real shot of going to the World Cup with Canada. So if I played it out, I'd say to myself, I'd go to the World Cup. It would launch my career. I'd end up playing in the EPL, blah, 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 blah. But no, you know what? I have a tattoo on the back of my back, and one of the elements is I have an F and an 8 for fate, because I'm a big believer in fate. And
yes.
So I don't look back with regret or I wish or that's just noise for me. So no, I don't think so. I don't really think that way.
Well, I'm in full alignment with you. I truly believe everything happens for us as it should be. And I mean, you had some major winks from the universe in terms of giving you signs that this is the journey you're meant to travel. I mean, you already mentioned it, but you received your first heart from a young man who passed away playing soccer. And then it was on Vancouver Drive, which is, in Wales, but the same name as the island that you grew up on for part of your childhood, Vancouver Island. Like, there's all these alignments. So you already answered this by saying you have a tattoo that says fate. So you obviously have some kind of belief system or belief in divine planning and destiny. Do you feel like there's a reason that you've gone through all this? And
I think I'm still on that journey. And I think that although I obviously, based on my life and all the things that have happened, there's some intervention happening that I'm not controlling. But I feel very strongly that we play a very big role in controlling our destiny. And so when you, as you indicated, when you get a wink from the universe, you need to recognize that and run with that. I believe strongly in making things happen and not letting things happen.
got it. That's
Yeah.
super clear. That's definitely clear and inspiring. Absolutely. So it's also very clear that you cherish your friends and your family. What role do friends and family play in your health and your success in life?
Yeah, so it's probably a bit like a pyramid. And at the very top of that pyramid is my wife, right? She's been with me since just after my first transplant. She didn't have to go through that with me, but I met her in Victoria, and for me it was love at first sight. For her it took a little longer, but I wore her down.
Love it.
But she, in many ways, she's been the rock. It's what people see is they see podcasts and awards and recognition and being on stage, and what people don't see is she's protected me and helped me. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I totally recognize that she must be such a huge part of your life and your journey and your success and your health. So I watched an interview with Kelly, your wife, and your childhood friend Ian, and they both get very emotional talking about you and your journey. And it was a reminder that the people who love us so dearly and who are closest to us, helping us through these adversities, also go through challenges themselves. So I'm sure Kelly would be able to speak to this more, but after so many years, I imagine you have some insight into her process. How can people who are supporting their loved ones through the journey of getting an organ transplant also support themselves through that difficult time?
It takes a couple things. It takes a singular determination, of course, on behalf of the person who's fighting. But all these other people around you in your ecosystem play a super important part. It's that balance on their side, knowing what to say, when to say it, how to contribute, how to be part of it, how not to be part of it, how not to be too intrusive. And it becomes a real art. Of course, in my ecosystem, we've been doing it for 40 years. So we got a pretty good system. It's not it's sort of this whole psychological mystery that you got to sort of unwind every day.
Yeah, amazing. And so obviously, your marriage and all these years together really speaks to your success as a team together. Like, you can't get through that without being able to be an amazing team together. So, props to your wife, Kelly, absolutely. And I'm sure your children too. You've had a second heart transplant. So we've been talking about one, but you've had two, and you are one of the longest living heart transplant recipients in the world. I have a question that I'm sure is constantly being asked of you. I don't mind if you do an eye roll inside. And I do know your answer to this because you did answer it in another podcast. And that is, have you ever experienced any new preferences or likes or dislikes after your heart transplants? As if to say that maybe you've taken on the preferences and likes and dislikes of your donors. And I know that your answer is no, but my question's similar to that. I'm curious because they've discovered that there's such a complex and strong communication network between the heart and the brain, and that they work in synchronicity with each other. I'm curious, has there ever been a time in your life where you've made a decision that was based on your heart's intelligence and your heart's intuition that maybe would not have been a decision that Simon alone would have typically made?
Interesting. So I think where we're leaning is a little more to the spiritual side, because
Yes.
from the physiological side, of course, as you may or may not know, you probably know logically, is there is no nerve connections from a transplanted heart into the central nervous system because they sever those during surgery.
Got it.
which is different than you physically have connection between your heart and your brain. I do not. So on the spiritual side, I think in my younger life, I was just too much of a skeptic to buy into any of that stuff. I think today I'm probably a little more open to that stuff. I think, again, going back to that epiphany, standing in front of somebody's gravesite who didn't give up his life for me, but I was a beneficiary of him losing his life. I think you change. It would be sort of incongruent to my spirit to pretend that I and I alone decide everything in my future and there's no influence from others. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I love it. There's openness, so that's cool. I'm happy. Okay, you founded the Simon Keith Foundation with your wife, Kelly. What inspired you to start that?
That day in 2011 in Newport was one step. When I got back from that trip, you brought up Ian Clitsey. I was up at Ian Clitsey's lake house at Lake Cowichan. And as we do, we are nice Canadians. We're drinking beer and smoking cigars. And so me and Ian and my and some of my pals and my wife and his wife Debbie, and we just sat around and we just sort of looked at each other and I said, we should start a foundation. And we thought we'll do a little golf tournament, we'll raise ten or $20,000 and we'll try to help a kid. And here we sit sort of 10 years later and we've raised millions and millions of dollars and helped thousands of kids and families. It started out who I was, humble, conservative Canadian, quiet, low expectations, do something small, and it's grown.
Wow, beautiful. I'm sure you have thousands of stories, but can you share a particularly moving triumph story of a child who's been helped through your foundation?
Yeah, there's so many. When I pick one, I'm gonna miss out a whole bunch of others.
I
So
know.
I'll tell you about one. So a few years ago, we sponsored every kid in North America to go to their transplant games if they wanted to. So all the kids in America went to the American transplant games. All the kids in Canada, Canadian transplant games, blah blah blah. So I get this letter from this family, and they said, thank you for supporting this our little girl. She had a heart transplant. So I reach out to the family, which I do a lot. We talk, we just talk. We just want to make sure that they're all good. And so this little girl, we decided that we're going to honor her. This was a couple of years ago. And her name's Madeline, and she's probably 9 right now. She was 6 when we honored her at our event. And we fly the family in and we do a video, and it's all very emotional. And we talk about who the kid is, what their sport is, et cetera, et cetera. So anyway, so Madeline's dad is a really good former golf pro and really good golf guy. So he's a golf guy. And Madeline's a really talented young golfer. And so fast forward a year later, we see Madeline meeting Tiger Woods at Augusta and getting an autograph. And
Oh my God.
yeah, yeah. And the whole thing went viral and it's really cool. She's just a great little girl. And those are the families that start out saying we're helping them, but really they're helping us. It's really cool.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can just imagine how fulfilling it is in all the ways that are meaningful and important. That's beautiful. What organizations helped you through your journey that you recommend people can also reach out to for support?
Well, my first journey, it was more public, I would say. And I was in Victoria at the time. And so the community, I mean, it was everybody. It just felt like it was everybody. It was all the soccer clubs and the Victoria Police and my friends holding dances for me and raising money. Back in when I was really sick in 84, 85, it was just a really big Victoria community effort that frankly just saved my life. When I got the Order of Canada, it's not a humble brag. When I got the Order of Canada, I wrote something about my pops and all the things that he taught me about being a Canadian. And one of the things that I think makes Canadians unique is that when you need help and you verbalize it, Canadians will help you.
Amazing. Amazing. So, yeah, you brought up receiving the Order of Canada, which is such a huge honor, and congratulations on that. And you did mention before that over the years you received so many awards and honors and recognitions, and all very well deserved. When you go within, what is the most important thing for you that you would want to be recognized for?
It's a tough question. I recognized maybe 10 years ago that this word legacy was super important. And I think part of starting the foundation was a legacy sort of play. But as I've matured and gone through the process, I've learned over time it just is 100% not about me, like 100% not about me, which sounds really counterintuitive because it's named after me and I'm the front guy and
No,
I'm the guy,
right.
but it's just not about me. It's about the Madeleines of the world, these beautiful little children that have to go through this horrific stuff
Oh,
and forever. They have to go through it
yes.
forever. So I don't know if there's
Yeah.
one Madeline in the world who said this, let me tell you about this guy who helped me one time. That would be cool.
Oh, beautiful. I love it. Yes, you do incredibly important work. It's very necessary. Heart health. So, taking care of yourself physically, making sure that you exercise properly, having good nutrition, those are all givens, obviously. Then there are emotions like love and compassion, which you've talked about already, because they have a positive impact on your heart health as well. How do you nurture love and compassion in your life?
Well, this is a new concept for me in the last 10 years. For the
Love it.
first 40, 50 years of my life, I was, type A athlete, competitive, business owner, entrepreneur, keep score by the money in the bank, whatever it was, right? And compassion was definitely a foreign concept to me. It's been incredible. It's an incredible gift once you get to the point where you can say things like I talked about, like leading with love and telling people you're proud of them. One of the things that happens in that I've found that I work with a lot of high functioning leaders, and inevitably, when you talk to almost anybody, there's so much rooted in how you were brought up and trauma that you've grown up with, real or perceived, and all that stuff that sits with you. And learning to just leave it is a real gift. I actually have in my office, I have an old suitcase that I keep in my office. It's literally right here. And inside that suitcase, not literally, but figuratively, is all the in my life that hasn't gone well or is trauma in my life, whatever. And I decide on any day whether I'm going to pick it up or not. Sometimes I want to pick it up and I want to be fueled by that.
Interesting.
Yeah. I want to be
Yeah.
fueled by it. And
Huh.
I want to be sort of mad and angry and use it to prove things or whatever it is. Other days, which are most days, I just want it to be over there and recognize that I control that and I decide when I pick it up or not.
Very cool. I love that idea. That's beautiful. What kind of suitcase is it?
Hey, I'll show you. I got it.
Yeah, let's see. Oh, wow. I love it.
That's it.
Very
That's
cool.
it.
Yeah.
That's got all that. That's got all my in it right there.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So, there are three kinds of victory stories I like to ask guests to share about. The first one is small daily victories. What's an example of a small daily victory for you, and how do you celebrate it?
I would say I'm pretty disciplined, but getting to the gym every day is probably those small victories. I love going to the gym and I also hate going to the gym. Sure, most people can understand that.
Yeah. Well, that makes it the victory, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Victories within failures. Has there ever been a time in your life where you experienced something as a failure, but then later on were able to recognize the victory within it?
Yeah, I think so. I think most people from the outside looking in would say that my soccer career was an enormous success. I view it, of course, as missed opportunity and a failure. One of the rare gifts that I do admit to having is that I only really look going forward. I don't look in the rearview mirror. I'm a forward looking guy in everything. So I don't sit around a
Yeah.
lot thinking about what if I should have. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it shows up in how you exist in this world and how just strong you are in every sense of the word. So
Thank
yeah,
you.
you can see that. Yeah,
It's
you're
nice.
welcome. So that brings us to your rainbow story, which is your overarching life story. It starts with a major adversity. It travels through the different colors and different life experiences, and then it brings you to your pot of gold, which is your life's purpose. Pulling everything together that we talked about, have you been able to identify for yourself your rainbow story and your life's purpose?
Yeah, I think that all this stuff that stacks on top of everything, all awards and athletic career and businesses and da 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 da, da all that stuff, even the foundation, those are just things that you do. I think for me, it is, I've entered a period in my life where it's more important for me to make sure that I make people feel worthy and proud of themselves.
Yes. I love that. I share the same purpose. Absolutely. That's why I make love medals, is because I want people to feel honored for who they are and their victories in life. And I think that's just such an essential part of being human, is feeling seen and celebrated that way. So I share that with you 100%.
Yeah, very cool. I spend a lot of time talking to a lot of people on a professional level. And what I find is that certainly with young people, whatever your definition of young people is, young people need, in my opinion, two very important things that they don't generally get in sort of everyday life. One is they need somebody in their life, a mentor, non related, not in their circle, not in their group, but a mentor, whatever it is, that will tell them the truth, that will hold up the mirror and say, no, that's not what you should be doing. This is a very obvious detrimental behavior, or, you're spending too much money, or you work at a job you hate, or you're in a terrible relationship, whatever that is, right? Somebody who can really tell them the truth. And on the
Mm-hmm.
counter side of that is someone who can provide them the love and the spiritual growth to be able to tell them, listen, I believe in you. You can be great. Here's the path. Here's how you do it. And I see people missing that. I see 90+% of people missing that in their life.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. And that's why I'm so passionate about it, because I lived that. I was that, but it's become, when I talked about my aha moment, it's my purpose. I want that so much for other people. I want it for the world because, yeah, the majority of people really struggle with that. Are you ready for a quick round of
Yeah,
questions?
go for it. Go for it.
Okay. When do you feel the most seen for who you truly are?
When I am with my core group of friends and I am being my authentic self, which is relaxing, and it's terrible to say, smoking a cigar and hanging out.
I love it.
It's true.
Oh, that's wonderful. How do you honor yourself every day?
I don't. It's too much to do.
You don't. Got it. What's your favorite way to celebrate?
Quietly with my wife.
Beautiful. And how do you define a victory or a triumph for yourself?
I don't think I do. I think I'm more interested in victories and triumphs for others.
I love that. And so then how do you define that for others?
Sometimes you just see the light go on. It's really cool.
Yes. Beautiful. Oh, you're so blessed that way. And you created that in your life. So, Simon, I love your story so much because it really is a story of these extremes, which is so lovely to learn about and fun to listen to. You went from accomplishing such high levels of success on an individual level, and like you said, focused on your own wants and needs, to being of service to others on a global scale, which is just truly beautiful and inspiring. So I want to acknowledge you for that and thank you for that. So thank you. It's just been such a great joy and a pleasure to speak with you today and to share your story.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And thank you for inviting me on here and getting to share and learn more about you. And it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Simon, your story is one of inspiring strength and determination. And it's also a beautiful example of transformation and growth. Your aha moment at the grave of your donor brought you to realize that the fulfillment you sought through achievements can truly be found in being of service to others. And from that, you've changed and saved the lives of so many. Simon, please accept this Love Medal certificate for going above and beyond in the area of service. Thank you so much for sharing your story of triumph with us. If you'd like to connect with Simon, we've included his contact details in the show notes. Thank you to those listening or watching. Please like and subscribe. If you'd like to honor yourself or someone you care about with a love medal, please visit lovemedals.com. You can also follow us on Instagram at lovemedals. I see, honor, and celebrate you. Does the family know? Do your kids know that's Dad's suitcase?
Yep.
If he's carrying it around, just like keep your distance today.
They don't need to see the suitcase. They know if I'm having a bad day. No, there's not those anymore. Those don't happen anymore. It's good.